All right, this is Openstax U.S. History, Chapter 12, Section 4, the Filibuster and Quest for New Slave States. Let us recall that the United States has been going through some pretty dramatic changes in terms of acquisition of land. We can just sort of list some of the instances where the United States has increased its territory, beginning with the Louisiana Purchase. We can mention the War of 1812 as really a war to remove Native Americans from their land, even though that's not explicitly what the war was about. Certainly had that consequence. The change in Indian policy or Native American policy with Indian removal, BAL, in 1830. We talked about Indian removal in the context of Andrew Jackson's presidency, but it's not a coincidence that the urge to remove Indians from their lands intensifies as cotton is becoming more profitable. Those things are linked in some sense. The acquisition of Texas in 1845, and then, of course, the largest territorial acquisition, at least in sort of these recent chapters, was the Mexican Cession in 1848. And we saw how Northerners and Southerners continuously argued about the status of slavery in those territories. And that intensity only increased as the years went on, the closer and closer we got to 1860 or 1861. And so the desire to seek out new territory, continues even after the Mexican Cession. We talked previously about filibusters. A filibuster is an unauthorized attempt by a U.S. citizen we'll just say annex. Annex means add land from another nation, right? So these are individuals who, maybe get a following of 100, 200, 300 people, go and invade some foreign country that's very sparsely populated in an effort to try and take it over. Again, these are not individuals who are authorized by the U.S. government to do so, although they do find support and opposition within the United States, namely in this period as we start to get closer and closer to the 1850s. It's mostly Southerners that are sort of, cheering for them to go out and seek new territory, and Northerners who are not. In 1818, the United States made it a federal law to do this, right? So this was sort of a crackdown on filibusters. But nonetheless, it continued. One piece of territory that continued to be in the crosshairs of the United States was Spanish Cuba. Before the Civil War, but even after the Civil War, there was an effort by a filibuster, Narciso Lopez. I forgot how to pronounce his name. But anyways, he was he was Venezuelan, I believe. But he was a filibuster who attempted to take Cuba from Spain. Ultimately, he failed. He actually attempted several times, failed, and was executed. Later on, the United States did try to make another effort to obtain Cuba, this time by the Onstead Manifesto. The Onstead Manifesto essentially said that the U.S. would invade Cuba if Spain did not sell it to them. The interesting thing about the Ostend Manifesto is that it was in secret, and that was because Northerners, would obviously oppose this, because any territory acquired by the United States in Cuba would only further lead to the expansion of slavery. So both of these efforts, one sort of illegally and one more legally, but still secret, did not result in the Spanish handing over Cuba to the United States. That would only occur in sort of a roundabout way after the Civil War. The Civil War broke out and kind of put any sort of end to this debate, but still Spanish Cuba was was an example of another overseas territory the United States wanted to get its hand on, with the intention really of spreading slavery there. Another good example of a filibuster in this period is William Walker, his effort to take over the Central American country of Nicaragua. He was able to occupy the presidency of that country, and in doing so, legalize slavery in an effort to try and spread slavery in Nicaragua, really pretty close along the lines of what the American South was doing. He too was eventually captured and executed, much like you might imagine a person trying to take over a foreign country. So even though there were further efforts to try and acquire overseas territory in the years leading up to the Civil War, none of it really came to fruition. And instead, the debates over slavery would not be about Cuba. They wouldn't be about Nicaragua. They would be about territories in the U.S. like California, like Kansas, like Nebraska.